In August of 2007, 20-year-old goth woman Sophie Lancaster was walking through Stubby Park in Bacup, England with her boyfriend Robert Maltby when a group of teenagers suddenly targeted the couple simply because of their appearance. The attackers brutally beat both of them before repeatedly stomping on Sophie's head as she lay defenseless on the ground, with one attacker later admitting they kicked her head like a football. Sophie fell into a coma and died from catastrophic brain injuries 13 days later, while Robert survived despite suffering severe injuries and memory loss from the attack. The case horrified Britain and became one of the country's most infamous hate crime murders, sparking nationwide debates about violence against alternative subcultures. Ryan Herbert, one of the main attackers, was convicted of Sophie's murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years, while another attacker, Brendan Harris, received a life sentence for manslaughter with a minimum term of 18 years after an appeal increased his punishment. While staying at an Airbnb in Virginia in July of 2024, Joe Bartolozzi revealed that he was bitten by a Lone Star tick, a species linked to alpha-gal syndrome, a bizarre condition that can suddenly make people severely allergic to red meat after a single tick bite. Joe said he began experiencing symptoms consistent with the condition, meaning foods he had eaten his entire life could now potentially trigger hives, vomiting, breathing problems, or even anaphylactic shock hours after eating them. He later said the symptoms eventually improved, though some victims remain allergic to meat for years or even permanently. In 2004, 24-year-old American college student David Snedon vanished while hiking alone through China's Tiger Leaping Gorge in Yunnan province and was initially presumed dead after search teams found no trace of him. But years later, multiple defectors and South Korean intelligence sources claimed Snedon had actually been abducted by North Korea and forced to work as an English tutor for younger Kim Jong-un. North Korea denied the allegations, and Snedon's disappearance remains officially unsolved.
My name is Kayla Mueller. I need your help. I've been here too long. I've been very sick, and it's very terrifying here.
That was Kayla Mueller, an American aid worker from Arizona who traveled to the Middle East to help refugees and civilians affected by the Syrian civil war before she was kidnapped by ISIS and held hostage for nearly 18 months. According to reports, she was repeatedly raped and sexually abused by ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who allegedly treated her as his personal captive and sex slave and moved her between ISIS compounds across Syria to avoid rescue attempts. The footage shown here was part of a proof-of-life video released by ISIS, showing Mueller appearing terrified as she pleaded to be brought home. In 2015, ISIS claimed she was killed in a Jordanian airstrike, though U.S. officials later said there was no evidence the strike hit the building where she was being held, leading many to believe ISIS itself most likely killed her. This heartbreaking photo shows Chinese kidnapping victim Yang Niuhua learning that both of her parents had died years earlier after spending decades searching for her following her abduction as a child. Yang was kidnapped at just 5 years old in Guizhou, China in the 1990s and trafficked far from her hometown, only discovering 26 years later that her devastated father had become an alcoholic and died just 2 years after she vanished, while her mother later died as a result of severe depression and grief, never knowing her daughter was still alive. Years later, Yu's relentless pursuit of justice helped track down her kidnapper Yu Huang, a trafficker linked to at least 17 abducted children, ultimately leading to Yu's conviction and death sentence. In Manila, there are long-standing reports of people living in the city's drainage tunnels, often called the Mole People. These communities are made up of homeless families, runaway kids, and people avoiding police or poverty on the surface. Outreach workers have found makeshift shelters built along the concrete wall, children with severe light sensitivity from spending so much time underground, and tunnels where the air is thick with sewage and rats. During heavy rains, flash floods run through the system without warning, and entire encampments have been washed out, with bodies sometimes recovered blocks away. This eerie burial suit from China's Liao dynasty was made between the 10th and 11th centuries, using woven silver wire, a bronze mask, and a metal crown to encase the dead. Elite members of the dynasty were sometimes buried in elaborate metal suits like this because it was believed they could help preserve the body and protect the soul in the afterlife. A 700-year-old statue of the Hindu god Ganesha sits perched on top of Indonesia's active Mount Bromo volcano, where it has overlooked smoke, ash, and eruptions for centuries, as part of a sacred ancient site used by local Tenggerese worshippers. In 2024, researchers using LiDAR scans in Ecuador's Upano Valley revealed the hidden remains of a massive 2,500-year-old civilization buried beneath the Amazon rainforest, including huge networks of roads, plazas, homes, and agricultural structures that had remained completely concealed under dense jungle for centuries. Archaeologists say the site is so enormous that only a small portion has been studied so far, and future excavations could uncover far more about the lost civilization and how millions of people may have once lived deep within the Amazon. This was the moment a zookeeper made a big mistake while working inside a panda enclosure at Chongqing Zoo in China, as 9-year-old panda Ding Ding tried walking through a restricted doorway. The keeper rushed to slam the metal door shut before the animal could get through, accidentally slamming it directly onto the panda's paw. Almost instantly, Ding Ding appeared to become agitated. The panda began chasing the terrified keeper around the enclosure while horrified visitors could do nothing but watch. Soon enough, the 250-pound bear managed to tackle her to the ground, thrashing at her legs and arms while appearing to briefly bite her. The keeper began to scream in terror before she was able to eventually free herself from the grapple. Attacks involving giant pandas are considered extremely rare, especially in zoos, because the animals are normally very calm and spend most of their time eating bamboo or sleeping. But despite their peaceful reputation, pandas are still bears with incredibly powerful jaws and enough bite force to crush bone when provoked or frightened. Despite how violent the footage looked, the zookeeper only suffered minor injuries and was treated at a hospital. The zoo later stated that Ding Ding showed no signs of ongoing aggression afterward and was behaving normally. After becoming the most famous child star in the world through Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin spent years spiraling out of the spotlight. He became trapped in a bitter legal battle with his parents over control of his fortune, and later admitted to struggling with drugs and heavy drinking, while tabloids became obsessed with photos of his alarmingly thin appearance, constantly pushing rumors that he was addicted to heroin or even close to death, claims he consistently denied. For years, the former child star became more known for looking sick and gaunt than for the blockbuster movies that made him an icon. And in 2017, he met Brenda Song, someone who could relate to his struggles that stemmed from child acting. Over the following years, Culkin appeared significantly healthier and more stable, eventually crediting Brenda and their family life with giving him purpose again. The two later had children together, and during his Hollywood Walk of Fame speech, he told her, "You've given me all my purpose again. You've given me family." 2 days before his death, he said this:
"Every day that I have on earth is a gift and a blessing, and I'm very grateful for that, because frankly, people are disappearing. Scientists are going missing. Now they're saying they're going to investigate this. The president himself is saying they're going to look into this and see if anything's going on. It's a little bit scary."
That was David Wilcock, a paranormal author and Ancient Aliens contributor, known for claims about UFOs, hidden technology, and government cover-ups. In the video, he referenced a series of recent deaths and disappearances tied to researchers and scientists in space, energy, and defense fields that he and many others believed were connected. Just 2 days later, on April 20th, 2026, in Colorado, deputies responded to a crisis call. Authorities said Wilcock was found outside with a weapon and died shortly after police arrived. His death was officially ruled a suicide. In 2019, aboard the Disney Dream in the Atlantic Ocean, a 5-year-old girl climbed onto a porthole railing for a photo and fell nearly 50 feet into the ocean below. Her father jumped in after her seconds later, hitting the water hard, before swimming to her and keeping her above the surface as the ship drifted on. With no flotation device and surrounded by open sea, they remained in the water until crew launched a rescue boat to pull them out. Both miraculously survived as the girl was treated for hypothermia, while her father suffered serious injuries, including a fractured spine from the impact with the water. Lance Armstrong built one of the most inspiring comeback stories in sports after surviving advanced testicular cancer and winning 7 straight Tour de France titles from 1999 to 2005. But behind the scenes, he was running a coordinated doping program involving performance-enhancing drugs and blood transfusions, while aggressively denying accusations and discrediting anyone who spoke out. In 2012, the United States Anti-Doping Agency exposed the scheme, calling it one of the most sophisticated doping operations in sports history. Armstrong was eventually stripped of all 7 titles and banned for life. Sponsors dropped him, his reputation collapsed, and in 2013 he admitted the truth in an interview with Oprah Winfrey, turning a cancer survival legacy into one of the most infamous falls from grace in sports. In 2003 in Rafah, British filmmaker James Miller was shot and killed while filming the documentary Death in Gaza. On his final night, he and his crew left a damaged home wearing TV-marked gear, waving a white flag and identifying themselves as journalists as Israeli forces sat roughly 100 meters away. A warning shot was fired but missed. Then seconds later, a second round struck Miller in the neck from the front, killing him. An autopsy confirmed the trajectory and linked the bullet to Israeli-issued ammo, contradicting claims of Palestinian fire. fire. The Israeli military closed the case with no charges, citing insufficient evidence, despite later findings suggesting clear visibility. A UK court pointed to evidence of intentional killing, but no prosecution followed. The case was officially closed in 2009 after compensation was paid to his family. In 2002, Michael was staying at a hotel in Berlin when he dangled his 9-month-old son blanket over his 4th-floor balcony. Jackson claimed he was simply excited and wanted to show off his baby to the fans below, but the media was quick to criticize Michael's parenting skills and life-threatening behavior. Jackson later apologized, stating that it was a mistake in judgment and that he didn't mean to endanger his son. Blanket is now 21 years old and rarely makes public appearances. Michael became increasingly reliant on medication after being prescribed painkillers following the 1984 burn incident. Over time, it expanded into a combination of sedatives, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleep aids that he depended on just to function. He reportedly used aliases to obtain additional prescriptions without raising suspicion. But eventually, he lost the ability to sleep naturally, going long stretches without real rest unless he was chemically put under. In his later years, his physician Conrad Murray was administering propofol at home, effectively replacing sleep with anesthesia, leaving his entire routine built around cycles of medication and sedation. In Addo Elephant National Park, South Africa, a lioness named Josie went blind around age 12, likely from untreated eye disease such as cataracts or glaucoma. In the wild, that's almost always a death sentence since lionesses rely on vision to hunt and avoid threats. But instead of abandoning her, her 2 adult daughters stayed by her side for the next 5 years. They guided her using contact calls, flanked her while moving so she wouldn't walk into danger, and shared their kills so she could eat despite being unable to hunt. Thanks to her daughters, she survived like this until about age 17, which is already near the upper limit of a wild lion's lifespan. 2008, on a beach in Montauk, Long Island, New York, a bloated, hairless carcass washed ashore with no clear identifying features, quickly dubbed the Montauk Monster. The body was already in an advanced state of decomposition, likely causing the loss of fur and the distorted shape of the head and limbs. As photos spread online, some speculated it was an escaped or discarded experiment from the nearby Plum Island, home to a government animal disease research facility, or something connected to rumored labs in Montauk. Wildlife experts said it was most likely a raccoon or dog altered by decay and water exposure, which can strip fur and change how the skull appears. No official identification was ever confirmed, and the body disappeared shortly after being photographed, leaving the Montauk Monster unresolved and open to speculation. Steve Irwin spent his entire life working hands-on with animals that could kill him, and he openly said that if he ever died, it would likely be from wildlife. Throughout his career, he was constantly bitten, cut, and injured by snakes, lizards, and crocodiles. There were multiple close calls where crocodiles snapped inches from his body. He regularly handled some of the most venomous snakes in the world in remote areas, where a single bite could have easily been fatal before help arrived. This was one of the last photos ever taken of Steve off the coast of Queensland in 2006 before a stingray struck him with its tail, sending a barb through his chest and directly into his heart. Fatal stingray injuries like this are extremely rare, with fewer than 20 documented deaths worldwide since the 1950s. The barb was quickly pulled out during the emergency, which likely accelerated the bleeding, but the damage to his heart was already catastrophic either way. The moment was caught on camera, and the footage was reportedly destroyed before it was ever released. According to those present, his final words were reportedly, "I'm dying," before he went into cardiac arrest. The stingray is believed to have acted defensively as Steve approached from above. Despite decades of surviving encounters with some of the most dangerous animals on Earth, Steve died from a single rare defensive strike, the exact kind of risk he had always accepted. A 34-year-old orangutan at the Metro Richmond Zoo in Virginia named Patrick was given a royal cloak for his birthday, and without any training, he tied it around himself like a wearable outfit. Orangutans are already known for advanced problem-solving and tool use, but moments like this show just how far that intelligence can go. Instead of playing with it, Patrick used the fabric with a clear purpose. It's a small moment, but it highlights the level of cognitive ability orangutans are capable of. This orb weaver spider had nowhere to attach the bottom of its web, so it made its own anchor. With no stable point to build from, it picked up a small rock and used it to hold the entire structure together. Orb weavers are known for their precise, almost mechanical construction, but this goes beyond instinct. It shows they can adjust their strategy when conditions change, solving problems in real time. In this case, the spider effectively created a solution to the missing piece of its environment, creatively allowing it to hunt in a place it otherwise couldn't have. Why is he doing that, though? This was the moment a woman was attacked by her pet cat who'd been friendly for years, showing how animals that seem completely safe can suddenly turn without warning. In many cases like this, the aggression isn't random at all. Cats are extremely good at hiding pain, and when something is wrong internally, it can build up until they react suddenly and violently. Undiagnosed injuries, infections, dental disease, or even arthritis can cause them to abruptly lash out at the person closest to them. There's also something called redirected aggression, where a cat becomes triggered by something like another animal or loud noise, but ends up attacking their owner instead. Veterinarians say that sudden, uncharacteristic aggression in cats is often one of the clearest signs that something is medically wrong. In many cases, these attacks end with the owner needing stitches or hospital treatment. In 1991, on Kawagarbo, a sacred mountain in Tibetan Buddhism, a Japanese-Chinese expedition attempted to summit the peak, which had never been climbed. But an avalanche suddenly struck their camp, killing all 17 members. After the disaster, climbing was banned, and Kawagarbo remains one of the highest unclimbed mountains in the world. Bernie Madoff, the architect behind one of the largest financial frauds in history, died in 2021 while serving a 150-year sentence at the Federal Medical Center in North Carolina. Despite traditional Jewish burial customs, he was cremated and his family refused to claim his remains. His ashes were instead sent to a law office in New York, where they reportedly remain unclaimed, sitting in storage years after his death. This was the moment a young boy with autism was seen walking alone on a monorail track at Hershey Park, dozens of feet above the ground. He'd been missing for about 20 minutes after getting separated from his family and somehow made his way onto the restricted area of the monorail. People below him started shouting in panic trying to guide him, but he seemed overwhelmed and confused and kept changing direction along the narrow track. Thankfully, one man rushed over, climbed onto a nearby structure, and pulled himself up onto the track. He carefully approached the boy, picked him up, and carried him back to safety before eventually reuniting him with his parents. This was the moment a boy was suddenly electrocuted after touching a metal door in a condominium courtyard. What looked like a normal exit somehow became live with electricity, locking his muscles in place and leaving him unable to let go. Within seconds, his friend realized what was happening and grabbed him by the legs to pull him free. In situations like this, the safest option is always to cut the power or use something non-conductive to separate them. But when there's no time and someone is actively being electrocuted, people sometimes resort to physically tackling them to break the contact. Cases like this are almost always caused by faulty wiring or poor grounding. During the 2020 COVID-19 lockdown in New Hampshire, a family was forced to say goodbye to their dying father through a window as nurses in full protective gear stood inside his room. Unable to be with him in his final moments due to strict isolation rules, the nurses held up handwritten signs reading, "He is at peace and we are so sorry," showing how the pandemic separated families even at the most dire moments. In August of 1994 in Oakville, Washington, residents reported a translucent, gelatinous substance falling from the sky during multiple rainstorms over several weeks, coating cars, roads, and buildings. Many locals claim they developed flu-like symptoms afterward, and samples of the material were sent for laboratory testing, though results were inconsistent and never confirmed a clear origin. Various explanations were proposed, including atmospheric phenomena and waste from passing aircraft, but none were definitively proven, and the incident remains unexplained. In 2004, the British reality show There's Something About Miriam flew 6 men to Ibiza to compete for £10,000 in the affection of 21-year-old Mexican model Miriam Rivera. Throughout filming, the contestants were never told that Miriam was transgender. In the finale, after one man was chosen as the winner, Miriam revealed the truth on camera. The reaction was immediate. Several contestants later sued the production company, claiming emotional distress and deception. The case was ultimately settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, reportedly around £500,000 split among the contestants. Years later, in 2019, Miriam Rivera was found dead inside an apartment in Mexico at age 38. The death was officially ruled a suicide, though some of Miriam's family disputed the conclusion and believed there may have been other much darker circumstances surrounding it. In 2018, a man from Rhode Island returned from his vacation in Costa Rica with severe migraines and facial paralysis, initially thought to be a brain tumor. But instead, doctors discovered a rare black mold growing inside his brain, forming dangerous abscesses. The fungus, found in soil, is known for attacking the brain and carries a mortality rate of around 70%, with early cases historically being almost always fatal. Since 1911, only about 120 cases have ever been recorded worldwide. The infection likely entered his body during the trip and slowly spread to his brain, causing several strokes and neurological damage. Because of its location deep in the brain, the mold couldn't be fully removed, but after extensive treatment, the man miraculously managed to survive. In April of 2011, French aristocrat Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès killed his wife, 4 children, and the family's 2 dogs inside their home in Nantes using a .22 caliber rifle while they slept. Investigators later found the victims wrapped in plastic and buried beneath the terrace, alongside religious items and letters suggesting he had carefully planned the murders before withdrawing money, abandoning his car in southern France, and vanishing without a confirmed trace. Despite an international manhunt, sightings, and several false leads over the years, he's never been located, leaving the case one of France's most disturbing unsolved family murder mysteries, with authorities still uncertain whether he escaped abroad, lives under a false identity, or died shortly after disappearing. In 1823, near the Grand River in present-day South Dakota, American frontiersman Hugh Glass was brutally mauled by a grizzly bear, leaving him with a broken leg, a torn scalp exposing his skull, and deep claw wounds across his back and throat. Believing he would certainly die, 2 fellow trappers assigned to watch him abandoned him and stole his weapons and supplies. But against all odds, Glass miraculously survived. With no gear and barely able to move, he set his own broken leg and began dragging himself across the wilderness while tracking down the men who had betrayed him. To prevent infection, he reportedly let maggots consume the dead flesh in his wounds, survived on berries and roots, and once scared wolves off a bison carcass so he could eat it. After crawling roughly 200 miles through the frontier, Glass reached Fort Kiowa on the Missouri River, completing one of the most legendary survival stories in American history and inspiring the Revenant. For nearly 6 years, a woman named Lydia Abate has searched obituaries to find recently deceased people and contacted their families offering free estate cleanouts. In exchange, she requests to keep the vintage clothing left behind by the deceased. By collecting garments from the estates of people who have died, Abate has built an entire wardrobe and said she hasn't had to buy clothes in years. In 1998, during an Olympic Airways flight from Athens to New York City, a passenger suffered a severe asthma attack after being seated near the smoking section. His wife repeatedly asked a flight attendant to move him away from the cigarette smoke, but she was first told there were no empty seats and later that the crew was too busy. The man's condition worsened during the flight and he later died from the attack. His widow sued the airline and was eventually awarded about $1.4 million in damages. This video has been causing panic across the internet after 2 rare doomsday fish washed ashore on a beach in Cabo, Mexico. Creatures are called oarfish, long ribbon-like deep-sea animals that normally live thousands of feet below the surface and are almost never seen by humans. According to Japanese folklore, oarfish are known as messengers from the sea god's palace and are said to appear before major disasters. In reality, when oarfish are seen near the surface or close to the shore, it often means they're sick, injured, or dying, which is one of the reasons why sightings are so rare. But because of the old folklore surrounding them and recent current events, the appearance of 2 at the same beach quickly sparked alarm online. Scientists in Melbourne, Australia recently did something incredible by connecting about 200,000 living human brain cells grown in a lab dish to a computer and using them to play the 1993 video game Doom. Neurons, grown from human stem cells and placed on a microchip with electrodes, received electrical signals representing what was happening in the game. When the cells fired in certain patterns, the system translated that activity into in-game actions like moving or shooting enemies. Researchers said the neurons showed signs of learning through feedback, though they currently perform poorly and often die during experiments. The project, developed by Cortical Labs as part of its biological computer, is an attempt to combine living human brain tissue with silicone hardware.